So now that we've established what we're going to be brewing with, in this video series, I'm going to be using the French press. And if you follow along with my previous videos, my recommendations, you get yourself a French press. It's going to be super easy to start. If you watch my French press video, you'll see that it has all the information in there really for you to get brewing, started brewing on the French press. In this video, I'm going to talk about one of the most, if not the most, important things that you need to know in order to get started, and that is consistency. One of the reasons why it can be a real challenge to get super into coffee, to get into brewing it well at home all the time. Like, imagine you go to a cafe and you have a really good coffee there, and then you get the whole bean coffee and you take it home and you try to make it yourself. One of the things that can stop you from making a really good cup of coffee when you want to is consistency. And in order to bring consistency into your brews, we have to eliminate as many variables as possible. One of the most important concepts when it comes to brewing is simply using the proper amount of coffee and water in the brew. That's one of the reasons why the French press is such a good method for learning this, is because all you have to do to brew on this, as you saw in the video, is add your coffee and add your water. And because of that, this is going to be a great method for learning the concept of brew ratios and the concept of brewing by weight instead of volume. In this video, I'm going to talk really briefly about brew ratios. It's something that I discussed in the French press video that you previously watched. And then after this video, you'll see a video where I demonstrate why it's important to measure your coffee by weight instead of by volume. In short, the reason for that is that not all coffee is created equal. One scoop of one coffee is different from one scoop of another, and in the next video I will show you that. In this video, I just want to talk briefly about brew ratios. Now, this is a concept that we use in the industry to communicate our recipes for brewing coffee, and it has to do with the amount of water to the amount of coffee that is used in the brew. A standard ratio, which I recommend that you start with on any brew method, just as a baseline, is 16:1. That means that you'll have 16 grams of water for every 1 gram of coffee that you use. And just to reiterate, that is the amount that is used during the brew. So what you'll see me do on videos, on brewing videos, is I'll often have a scale. Now, this is a fancy scale. This is a really, really nice scale. This is the Akaya. It's a very fancy scale. You can use a simple food scale as well, but you'll see me take the whole brewing device and stick it on the scale. And then what I'll do is I'll add my coffee first, and then I'll pour in the water, measuring the water as I brew. And I do that for whatever brew method I use. Because what that ratio is telling us is, as I said, how much coffee and water we're using during the brew. And I reiterate that just because measuring it beforehand is not going to give you the consistent accuracy that you want. And what we want right now is consistency. So going back to the French press, I'm going to do a quick demonstration to show you how much coffee I would put in here to brew a full French press. And there's a super easy way to figure this out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the empty French press onto the scale here, and I'm going to zero it out empty. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it up with water. Okay, so what I've done is I filled it up to a little bit below, you can see there's a bit of space here. There's more space for water, but keep in mind coffee is going to take up some amount of space in this. This is labeled as an 8-cup French press, so I could do some other calculations for this, but I like to keep it simple. I've weighed out, I've filled up the French press to this point here, and it's giving me 840.6 grams of water. I'm going to call it 840 and call that good. So I know that I can fit 840 grams of water in here, and since I want 16 grams of water to every gram of coffee, in order to find out how much coffee I use, I just take 840 divided by 16, and that gives me 52.5 grams. When I do these sorts of things, I'll just kind of fudge the numbers around that a little bit. So I'll measure just a little over 52 grams of coffee in there, and then I'll fill this up with about 840 grams of water. And then what I'll do is I'll brew that way and see how it turns out. If I like the taste, that's good. Then I know that every time I want to brew on this French press, I just put in 52 grams of coffee and then add in 840 grams of water, and I have a great cup of coffee every time. I might find, actually, after doing this that maybe that's a little too much water after adding the coffee. Maybe it needs to be more like 800 grams. But as you can see, it's really easy to adjust from there. But that is brewing ratios. And my demonstration here is simply to show you why using that concept makes brewing good coffee so simple. As long as you're using the right amount of coffee to water, you're well on your way to brewing a great cup of coffee, and that is the way you need to do it. In the next video, if you're just auto-playing through this series, you will see my video on why you should measure by weight instead of volume. I just go into a little bit more and visually show you the differences with coffee. So check that out, and then I'll see you in the following video.